Hi, I'm Leon Herzon, and I want to welcome Roy Schilling to our Inside Stories podcast. Welcome, Roy.
Thanks, Leon. It's good to be here.
Very nice. So let's start with you. Share a little bit about your journey, your background, your role that you play, a little
hmm
bit more about yourself.
Sure thing. So where I am today is I'm an agile coach, and that means I help organizations learn how to do agile, lean out their processes, design properly, and along the way, hopefully helping some people to to do their jobs, enjoy their jobs a little bit better. Right? That's one of the benefits of the job. Long time ago, started out as a software developer, so that was my history, and then started my agile journey about 22 years ago. I was practicing as a developer, and then became a coach about 16 years ago, and haven't looked back since. That's my journey.
So, what made you change from the software development in the initial parts of your career to agile coach?
Yeah, there were a couple of steps in the middle there. Like I went into the management route and things like that, and that's really where my journey toward being a coach actually started. I noticed that as a manager, someone working within an organization, it was really difficult to bring any kind of positive change. Really hard. It's like when you're an internal person, it's hard to make anything happen. So I thought there's got to be a better way. I didn't like where things were going with the organizations I had been working with, and I thought there are better ways of doing things. So I had been practicing agile for a little while and thought it's time to make the move. All right, now let's see if I can help other organizations. The funny thing is, Leon, is that after I left to become a coach, an external coach, a few years later, the same company I was working for invited me back to help them learn how to do agile when I was already there. I could have done it, but since I was an outsider, it was viewed very differently. That's kind of what got me started in the whole process, wanting to bring change, and I knew I couldn't do it internally.
Do you find that companies tend to value more an external perspective? Because you just gave that example right now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and it's unfortunate that that's the case, but often hearing things from someone who's not part of the organization has more credibility. I was saying the exact same things when I was an employee, but they weren't. It's like yeah. They're not really paying attention to it. But as an external, you bring some credibility, and to be honest, you also bring experience from other organizations, which is really valuable. But unfortunately, they do tend to pay to tend to pay attention to people that are outside the organization. It's not the best.
all right. So, I know you for a while, and you have a
Yeah.
very extensive journey doing very successful agile transformations. So, if you look to your entire career, what would you consider, Roy, your most significant achievement to date?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first thing is I've worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of companies by this point in my career, and I know that I've made some significant difference in those organizations. I've helped them improve, become more efficient, more effective, and maybe make them slightly more fun places to work as well. But honestly, I think that the biggest achievement is helping the individuals, right? The actual people that are doing the work, or leaders that are struggling with trying to find themselves, that one-to-one connection and relationship, and helping individuals to become better at their jobs and enjoy it a little bit better. There's nothing like it, right? It's just that one-to-one connection is fantastic.
So, talking about the agile transformation, right?
Yeah.
And you just mentioned the individuals, the importance of the individuals. What do you consider the most common challenges that you see organizations facing today? With your hundreds or even thousands of cases, what are the main challenges, the most common challenges?
So interestingly, letting go of what they know to be correct, but actually isn't, is one of the biggest challenges that you face. We talk about this a lot in Agile, doing things like resource allocation and matrix organizations where people are part-time on a team and part-time on projects. It's one of the worst things you can do. But organizations view it as like, well, this is the way we do work. This is the right way to do things. And this is the way we allocate work to people. It's highly ineffective. So a big challenge that a lot of organizations have is doing things the way that they've always done them for 40 years and saying this is the right way to do it, and not recognizing that maybe there are other ways that seem crazy, they seem completely wrong. But if they don't let go of those things that they've always done, a transformation will at least take longer and may never really take hold, because you kind of fall back on their critical issues, on their ways that they used to do things. That's their comfort zone. They keep falling back to it. And especially, let me say this too, especially with a down economy, if they are struggling a little bit, if they need to cut costs, what'll happen is they'll start moving back to the way that they've done things in the past, because that's what they're comfortable with, and it puts them backward. Make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And how do you overcome those challenges? What is the approach
Mm.
that you use? Because I assume you face that very often.
Constantly.
Maybe you are quite successful in the initial implementations, then, as you mentioned, they fall back to their old ways.
Yeah.
How do you overcome that?
Yeah, the key there is to build in that stability, to build in the ability to continue with their transformation. The first thing is transformation never ends, right? Never ends. You are always improving. You're always, and it's not meaning you need a consultant for the rest of your lives as an organization, but more that you should be continuously improving and continuously looking at getting better. So you have to build in those cultural changes to accept that possibility that you're never really finished. You always have to improve. It really comes down to culture, behaviors, the human being aspect. And if you can't do that, and I've had a lot of clients, and let's be honest, a lot of agile transformations fail. They really do fail. And the reason is that when it gets hard, companies stop. When they recognize that they have so many problems because they've always had those problems, they'll say, "Well, we didn't have these problems before." Yes, you did. You always had those problems, but now you can see them.
Ah,
And if you don't build in that behavior, that culture, that we can get past those problems, they never will. Right? They're going to see the problems and they're going to fall right back and say, "We can't solve this," and then you lose. Right?
so yeah, those are companies that fall back or they have
Yeah.
issues, and you just share how to overcome them.
Hmm.
You also have companies who are actually looking to
Yeah.
change the ways they are doing because they are aware
Yep.
there is a better way, must be a better way, and they move to agile or even a hybrid.
Yep.
Why do you think they are looking to do that? It's just pure results because they have poor results and they want to find another best thing to improve.
Hmm.
When you talk with the executive level, what is the main reason you hear from them saying, "Well, that's the reason why we want to do that"?
Yeah, the number one thing I hear from leaders is they want to produce value faster. That's the number one thing. They want to stay ahead of their competition. They want to produce things faster. And secondarily, they don't want to do it for more money, right? So if they can be more effective, more efficient, produce value faster, then that makes them more competitive. It's an obvious answer, right? They want to be competitive, and that's really what it comes down to. And again, especially if the economy isn't great, it's an opportunity to double down on that. I just had a conversation with one of my clients recently about this. They're not struggling, but they're feeling the effects, and because
Mhm.
their products are very very expensive, and when in a slightly down economy, people won't buy them as much, right? Organizations don't buy. So this is the time to double down, to go even further, so they can become more efficient, more effective, get their employees more involved and more engaged, taking more ownership and accountability. So that's really what they're looking for. It's really pretty simple: produce more stuff, produce it faster, for the same cost or less, remain competitive. That's the big thing. And when you get the executive buy-in, kind of going back a little bit to your earlier question about how to get it sustainable, if you get that executive buy-in where they recognize the need to change, you're going to be a lot more successful, right? That's a key. Get that executive buy-in so that they're doing the change management, they're saying the message over and over again, and then people are going to start getting the idea. My senior leadership is supporting this, so I'm in. I'm going to make this work.
Would you say you just mentioned that it's time to double down?
Yeah,
Would you say that's the moment where companies make the mistake to let it
yeah,
go?
yeah. 100%. They're either struggling as an organization or it's not working the way they expect it to, which it never works the way they expect it to. Let's be honest about that. It's always going to be a little bit different than their vision is. That's when they come to that decision point of should we continue this or should we stop? And if they stop, maybe they've gotten some benefit from the initial transformation. Maybe they've learned some things about their own organization, but they're never really going to get the return on their investment. And that's a problem. If they continue, at the very least, they're going to get benefits in that concept of continuous improvement. Maybe they don't go full agile. So what? Right? As long as they're getting the benefits of that agile mindset, then they're going to get benefits. They're going to get better at delivering things. Even if they stay 100% waterfall, bringing that agile mindset is going to help them significantly. And to your point, that's where that inflection point is. They either make the decision to go back and recognize they can't do it, or they continue and get at least some level of benefits.
So to let's our viewers here, let's say that I'm a middle management position. Mm-hmm. I recognize the inflection point. I see that the company is ready to make the wrong decision to abandon because it's not working. What should I, in that position as a middle management, I don't have the decision making power. How can I argue? How can I go and try to convince them on that? Or there is no way to do it?
It's a great question, Leon. So one of the things I always encouraged people to do when they're trying to, let's call it what it is, they're trying to market these approach, market, sales. You got to do marketing. Bring data, show the successes. And people will believe data over an emotional response of, I feel we're getting better. Show the results. Now, importantly, in order to be able to bring the data, they have to be able to measure. And so many organizations are terrible at measuring themselves. If you are afraid of measuring yourself, then this is going to be a major failure, right? Just that simple. You've got to be able to measure to prove that you're actually making progress. So be prepared to bring that data. And this is something a lot of organizations are very hesitant to do. They're nervous about measuring because it might show some very, very negative things. But that's the point, right? You bring the data, say, here's where we are, where we were, right? And these are some of the negative things we were seeing. Now here's the data that shows that those negative things have either reduced or gone away, and we're producing better stuff even faster. So you got to bring that data and show it to your stakeholders, your leadership, and that's what's going to convince them. Go to the money, go to the data, and that's a non-emotional, logical argument that they're going to respect.
Would it make sense, in your perspective, to start with a small pilot where you can have easy wins or something that you can measure, that you can showcase, instead of a full-blown, okay, let's implement Agile throughout the organization? What is your experience in one case or another? What works better?
Yeah, so definitely try to pilot it, do some experimentation first. 100% agreed with that. But also make sure you know what you're piloting. You're not piloting to prove that Agile works, because Agile works. There's no question it does. Millions of companies do it, right? So Agile does work. What you're trying to prove is how it's going to work for you. So how does your organization going to accept it? How is your culture? What challenges are you going to face? So make sure you're proving the right things and measuring the right things.
You already mentioned several success factors, but if you can pinpoint the key elements in an agile transformation that can increase the chance of success, what would that be? What are those key elements, if you can number a few?
Yeah, so some things that you need to make sure that you have in your organization to increase success. First thing is executive buy-in. You need to have leadership that is saying the message repeatedly. They need to say, this is the direction we're going and we want to do this, and you have full support. You also need to make sure you're getting your stakeholder buy-in. That's critically important. If your technology group or engineers or whoever it is that's going down this direction, if they've decided to go this way, fantastic. But if the stakeholders are still expecting the way that they used to get them, they're going to be disappointed, and you're going to have failures as a result of that. So your stakeholder buy-in from all parties is critically important. Another thing to think about is the willingness to change. If an organization is set in the direction, they have very strict policies, very strict regulations, things or procedures that they follow in their organization, and they're unwilling to let those policies go, at least to some point anyway, then you're not going to be successful with your transformation. Agile is different. And if you try to use the same processes for Agile that you did for Waterfall, it's not going to work. So all kinds of bad things can happen as a result of that. You need to make sure your organization is saying, yes, I know that we have these policies. They were there for a reason. Maybe there's a different way that we can still get the results that we needed, the same structure in place, but do it in a lighter weight way to enable Agile to actually work for you. So those are some key elements. Above all, one of the most important things that you need is talented people. People that are talented, they have the technical skills, and if they don't have those skills, they're willing to get them. They're willing to learn new things. It all falls to the people that are doing the work. And if they are unwilling to come along, or if they don't have the right support from their leadership, don't even try, right? Just be prepared. You got to have good people, or at least the right mindset to get those people to come along and make sure that they're doing the right stuff, doing it the right way.
Excellent. So I now have a few additional questions on what you just said, right? So would you say that highly regulated organizations have a little bit more of a challenge to implement agile than less regulated one?
So they do, and what's interesting is that they really shouldn't. And let me explain what I mean by that. So there's been a lot of Agile's been in the news a lot lately. It's a lot, at least in the community anyway, where a lot of heavily regulated industry organizations are abandoning some of those Agile practices. And a lot of the reason that they're doing that is they're saying, well, we're heavily regulated. Agile doesn't work very well in that kind of environment. Well, what's funny about that is that actually Agile is built for complexity. It's built for those things. So it actually can work extremely well in regulated environments. The challenge, though, is heavily regulated environments. They're focused on cost control. They're focused on risk control. They're focused on control. So it's not necessarily Agile not working in those environments. It's the people that are in those environments that are unwilling to let it go and accept that Agile can be much better in those environments. It is literally built to manage complexity. And in regulated environments, you got a lot of complexity. And I'm thinking finance and insurance and organizations like that. It's heavily, heavily regulated. You can manage it much, much better using Agile approaches. But unfortunately, the people that are involved, they don't want to accept that concept. They get comfort in those strict processes and policies.
You mentioned also about executive buy-in, the importance of the top management support. Would you also say that without executive support is harder, or even it's not possible? Do you have cases where there was a case where there was no executive support, but the implementation was successful?
Yeah, it's certainly, you're going to get some successes, but what you're really doing is a localized optimization. You might get a couple of teams or a project that's doing a little bit better, maybe get some better results. So you will get some level of benefit, but unless leadership is there to fully support it, and that means changing the culture, changing the organization to enable this, then you're going to have limited success. And it might even be you have some successes, great, you advertise it, but then they don't want to do it again because of all of the headache that they had trying to get it to work in the organization. And this is a well-known fact. The number one cause for failed Agile adoptions is organizational culture. The number one cause.
Number one.
So the number one, that's just pure and simple, right? And what that means is the people that have most control over the organizational culture are your senior leaders. So you could say that if organizational culture is the biggest barrier, then maybe it's executive leaders that are causing that, right? So if you don't have that buy-in, if they're not willing to move and change things, you'll get local optimizations, but it'll never really go anywhere.
All right. And the last point you made was about talent people. And I remember in one of our conversations, you mentioned about the three things that usually those implementations or any change management or improvement or innovation, it's based people, processes, and tools. And that very often you see people investing first on tools,
Yep.
then in processes, and finally on people, which is exactly the reverse of what
Absolutely
you see.
opposite.
Exactly. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, Leon, it's so funny that you mentioned the tool thing. I've had so many cases where they would view success of their transformation that everyone is using the tool of choice, whatever that tool happens to be. If everyone's in the tool, we've transformed, we're agile. It's not even close, right? Not even close. So let's talk about the process and people thing. What you generally want to do is you want to start with the people first. Bring them along, build in accountability, build in ownership, change the local behaviors of the team members themselves so that they are happy with the choice. They're managing themselves. But on top of that, by starting on the people first, you enable them to define their own processes, what works for them. Instead of saying, here are your processes, people you must obey. Instead, you say, people, what should your processes be? And they
Mm.
define the processes. And that's why people first, process second. And then finally, after you've got processes that are working for you, you choose the tool that's going to align with your processes. Otherwise, what happens is a lot of these tools will force you down a path. These are the
Hmm.
processes that we recommend. Well, great. Now you've got a tool from an external vendor that's defining what you should be doing inside your organization. Well, how does that make sense?
Yeah.
People, then process, then tools, right?
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you. So, can you share a story of success? Something that you were really impressed by the results the company got? Uh,
Yeah.
you don't need to
Yeah.
identify the organization, but just give us
Absolutely.
a little bit of information. What was a success and why it was successful? And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So one that comes to mind, I was working with a private equity firm. Again, like you said, I'm not going to share their name, but a great company, great people, and it was a really rewarding experience for everybody involved. So if you know anything about the private equity space, it's all about money, right? The whole organization is about making rich people richer. That's what private equity firms do, right? That's literally
Yeah.
what they do. So they're very much about cost control, and they're very much about they're usually older organizations, so they have kind of a culture about them, and it's usually very resistant to change. So I was
Mm.
actually warned before I took the assignment. You don't want to be involved with private equity firms because you're never going to change one. Well, took it anyway, and I'm really glad that I did. So this organization I work with, what made this successful was that we started at the C-suite. We didn't start with teams. It was kind of funny though. It started out as a 2-day training session. So we came in to do a training
Wow.
session, and at the end of those 2 days, the executives that were part of those training sessions said, "Yeah, we're not doing any of this correct. We need to fix this." So the kudos to them that they recognized where they were not behaving correctly, that they're not getting the return that they wanted, and they needed to make change happen. So great. The whole reason it was successful is because they recognized that. So starting with the C-suite, we got buy-in. They were happy to do this. They wanted to get the return, and the key point with them was they recognized they had already spent a lot of money trying to become agile, and they weren't really getting the results they were expecting. They weren't getting, in their words, the return on investment. Right. So went down the path. We did a full transformation for them, the entire organization. Changed. They generally got rid of projects. They didn't have projects anymore. They were just doing the work that's most valuable. I'm not saying that's what everyone should do, but that's what was working for them. They got rid of projects. We changed the budgeting model, which was a phenomenal success. In this organization, prior to this transformation, the annual budgeting process, and a lot of you might be able to feel you can relate to this. It was 3 months of pain. Three
Oh wow.
months to define the budget for the next year. And what was funny, it was the year would start and people were doing work before they even got their budgets. Right. And this is not uncommon, right? Well, we got that 3 month budgeting process down to 3 days. So imagine how much money they're saving, how much pain they're saving. They could get focused on actually doing work rather than just determining how much money they needed. It was a much, much simpler process. So for this organization, they're not done yet, right? They still got a long way to go. That's, like I said, transformations are continuous; they never end. But we had major impact. Work was getting done faster. They were able to, hold people were holding themselves accountable more. People were enjoying the work more. Major success. Now, I do want to point out there's also a lot of times in organizations where you don't have those successes. But if you get the C-suite buy-in, start with the right people, people, processes, and tools. You focus on those things and focus on the most important things. You have a significantly higher chance of being successful.
So you talk about success. Would the approach itself matter? If it's Scrum, it's Kanban, it's Lean, it's Safe, it's DevOps, is whatever approach is out there. Would that matter?
So honestly, generally, no. Now there are some cases. There are definitely cases where choosing the right framework for the organization is very important. It's what you don't want to say is, well, everyone's doing Scrum, so we should all be doing Scrum. Well, that's not every team should be doing Scrum. It's just a wrong idea. There are teams that will get much better benefits from Kanban or whatever other frameworks. Choosing a scaling technique like Safe just because everyone's doing Safe, really bad idea. Safe may not be for you. Again, I'm not saying Safe is necessarily wrong. It just may be wrong for you. So it's important to first understand your organization, understand your real needs, and don't just choose a framework because you read about it in some article or some coach came in and said everyone should be doing this. And don't do it like that, right? Find what works best for you. People first, process second, right? And these frameworks, they're all processes, right?
Which I think it's kind of a basis of what the PMI does on the way of working,
Yeah,
right? So it adjusts to where you are, not a specific framework. Very good.
exactly
And,
right.
and I can even share a little bit. In 2016, we did implement not Scrum for sales, but we implemented the concepts, the
Yep.
philosophy of transparency, of innovation, of trying to new things and having a more flexible approach. And that worked very much. And it's not
Yeah.
something that you think initially on agile is sales. Sales agile. Wow, it
It
works.
works
The
great in
principles,
sales.
exactly,
Yeah.
empowerment and teamwork and all this stuff. So
Accountability.
yes.
Yeah. And Leon, you just raised a thought there. When you're going through a transformation, you do it in sort of stages. It's kind of an evolution to a transformation. It's actually highly related to that concept. There's a concept in martial arts. We use it in Agile called Shu Ha Ri, and basically it's a learning model. And organizations, not just people, but organizations need to learn also. And basically, when you first start out going through a transformation, you pretty much have to do things by the book. You have to do what they're told to do based on the framework, follow the frameworks properly, do it by the book. Because at this point, you don't know why you shouldn't do some of those things or why you are doing some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So do it by the book and learn, right? Follow the rules and learn. But eventually, you start recognizing, well, some of these things don't necessarily make sense for us, and maybe we can make some modifications. We've gotten to a point where the behaviors are now supportive of other models. So this is why a lot of organizations can start out with Scrum as an example, because there is more structure in Scrum. It forces you to do certain things, and that's important when you're trying to change it. That forced movement. But over time, you're already there. You don't need that structure as much. So maybe now you start adapting. This is a place where you can start making decisions about some changes that you can do, maybe not following all the rules, maybe going slightly into your own brand, right? Doing it your own way. Then eventually, none of that matters anymore because your organization is behaving a way, your culture is a certain way,
Exactly. Yeah.
it is a
Yeah.
way of working, it is who you are, and not just I am following this script, right? It's a way, it's a cultural norm at that point. And that's PMI is going that direction as well. It's the way of working. That's what we want to encourage with Agile, right?
Very well. Let's go to the other side of the spectrum. Give us a story that was a failure,
Yeah.
utmost failure, and what were the reasons for that failure?
Yeah. So I worked with an organization. It's heavily regulated organization, and we started out. They wanted to do agile for the same reasons most companies do. They want, but with regulated organs. And this was, let me, I'll be blunt. This is in finance. What finance is typically looking for is faster, cheaper, better. Right? That's what they're looking for. So you're not necessarily going to get that with agile. Right? It doesn't work like that. Yes, you should get faster, but you have to lighten up some of the policies to get faster. Yes, you may get cheaper because you're taking less time to do it. But the people to do the work, they need to be talented, they need to be skilled, and that's not free. So that's going to cost you money. Better? Yeah, probably because you're focusing more on quality. But if you haven't changed your policies where quality may not be as important to you, then that's not going to get better either. So the situation was that we brought Agile into this was only in part of the organization. We brought it into the organization, and they were following the rules, they were doing it, but they never changed any of their governance. Right. So what happened was they were expecting to see things in a waterfall way, specifications done at the beginning of the project. So that's not an
Mhm.
agile way of doing things, right? You don't do that in agile. But since they had these very strict regulations in the organization or policies in the organization, you must follow these. And if you don't, they would flag you as red and you'd show up on all kinds of naughty lists because your project is red. You didn't submit your specifications early enough. That's kind of what we do with agile, right? So since they never wanted to adopt, they never wanted to change, we spent a lot of it, honestly, Leon, is they had spent years developing those policies, a lot of time and money spent on those things, and they didn't want to let them go, right? Because that they spent so much investment on those policies. Well, the concept behind those policies were good. The implementation didn't work for Agile, right? So that
Mhm.
was a challenge. So we did get some successes. We had a couple of projects that did really well. But in the end, they didn't want to adopt. They didn't want to change. So it was a failure. I would say that they probably wasted some money simply because they were paying coaches. They're going through these transformations, and when you're going through a transformation, let's be honest, work tends to slow down for a little bit, right? Because you're learning new ways of doing things.
Yeah.
You're adapting. So do things do get less productive for a little bit. So they did waste some money. But in the end, they weren't willing to change. And I actually had to have a conversation with them. It's like, this is not working. I'm not bringing any value for you. So I'm going to leave. And it
Hmm.
was the right thing for them, right? If I'm not bringing value as a coach, then I don't belong there, right? They should be putting money elsewhere. So they did. And interesting thing is, a few years after that failure, they called me back saying, "Hey, we're ready now." And
Oh,
so
that was
yeah,
actually my next question. How they are right now? So,
yeah, well, they're ready. They say they're ready, right? I think it's time to go in and do an assessment and learn what's changed because just because you say you're ready doesn't mean you are. So the right thing to do is probably figure out what's changed since the last time. Why do they feel they're ready now? Do a more of an internal assessment. Find out if they are truly ready for it, the right support, the right buy-in, and if they are, fantastic. But if not, then it's time. They're going to have to wait a little longer, right? It's the right thing to do.
and you just mentioned something that we use to do, right, Roy?
Hmm.
We do an assessment to know at which
Yeah.
stage how mature the organization is on the agile principles. If they're just starting the journey, okay, you don't need to measure that necessarily, but if they have
Yep.
some level of, then it's always a good idea. And it also reminds me that I attended a presentation. I actually we visit a medical device company,
Mm.
and they were showing their project life cycle. It's very interesting because the first steps on the project life cycle, they use waterfall
Sure.
because it was strictly regulated by the FDA. But
Sure.
after that, they went completely agile. So they start to fulfill those obligations. So
Yeah.
it's not this or that. You can actually
It's
start
both.
to fulfill, right, that
Yeah.
obligation, and then you do the agile to the development of the product after all the requirements were met, and you follow those step by step, can be very stringent, and it has to be
Yeah.
that sequence as you just mentioned, right?
And that's really the key. You adjust how agile you are based on your context. So if you are, as an example, if you're doing work that is life critical, then you necessarily need more planning up front, right? So bad things don't happen, or change your approaches so that you can limit the exposure to, to harmful things happening. So
Yeah.
that it's managing your risk, and that means more planning. So go do more planning, right? That's an important thing to do. You're reducing your risk, you're reducing your exposure, perhaps saving lives. That's all a very, very good thing. But then you get to a point where maybe you don't need to worry about that as much. Now you can become more agile. You can start using some iterative approaches, learning. If you start adopting an agile mindset, which is things like, find waste and eliminate it, more of a lean mindset in that case, continuous improvement. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to experiment. It's okay to have failures.
Mm.
Adapt that mindset, and you can take those risky waterfall projects and start getting better successes, right? So it's that's what we're seeing in most organizations. There are very few companies that are pure agile, very, very few, right? Most organizations are hybrid, where they'll have some waterfall, some agile, and some hybrid in the middle, where you're making a combination of both. And that makes sense, right?
Yeah, very good. So, a question that I'm pretty sure our viewers have, and I always ask that during our conversation: what about AI? How is artificial intelligence transforming our agile frameworks and methodologies and approaches? How do you see that, and how do you see that in the upcoming years?
Oh, it's just a fad. It'll go. I'm kidding.
Right?
AI is here. And yeah, it is absolutely changing the industry, and it's changing pretty much every industry. I think where it's really going to be beneficial are for things like, product management, product development, doing market analysis, these kinds of things. Really huge value in doing that. There's also value in at least building some skeletal backlog, some high level road mapping, at least to get a starting point. It is absolutely changing, and there's lots of conversations about the role of Scrum Master, the role of product owner. Can AI help, or even perhaps even replace? I personally think, I don't think they can replace, but they can definitely help. Right? AI can absolutely help those roles. So it is absolutely going to change the industry, as it's doing pretty much everywhere. But just one caution that I as you know, Leon, I teach some AI courses as well. One caution that I always say is, don't be dependent on AI to do the job. If you put yourself in a place where you are now dependent on a machine telling you what to do, you're in trouble. That's real trouble, right? You have to keep the humans involved in the process. And so it's, that quote that's going around the internet. It's not, AI is not going to replace you. It's the person who knows AI that's going to replace you. And that's really important. Don't treat it as an enemy. Treat it as a research assistant. Treat it as someone that's going to help you do your job and take away perhaps some of those mundane things away that you don't enjoy doing. Give it to the AI, right? And make your job more enjoyable. But use it as a tool. Don't let it replace the humans, because that is when it's going to get into serious trouble.
Yeah, and that's and you mentioned you and I, we both have the chance to deliver those classes about
Yeah.
using generative AI, how to help that, and using for user stories. It's always nice.
Yeah.
It comes with some very interesting user stories, but
Great.
I never had a single case that I use a prompt where I could use exactly as is without making any suggestion. Yes, it can augment, but not
Yeah.
replace.
And it can
That's the
generate
message.
ideas. Yeah, you can generate some ideas that maybe you didn't have. I use it quite often to craft better objectives. Like if I'm doing OKR workshops, I'll use an AI to, write it with more passion and things like that to get them more interesting. But I am never replacing the human being in the process, because it could generate completely wrong stuff. And if you don't have a human in the process, you're gonna go forward with wrong stuff, and that's not good.
Yeah, and you mentioned that about how it can help. I just a few months back I wrote a white paper about artificial intelligence as a tool, a friend, or an enemy, right? So it depends
Mhm.
how you look into that. So yeah, absolutely, I completely agree with you.
Absolutely.
All right. So we are coming towards the end of our chat. I just wanted to ask you, can you recommend one or two books that were quite significant for you in your career? And we're gonna put the book names here on the screen as well.
Yeah.
What would that be?
Yeah. So I actually, so Leon, as you know, you sent me that question so that I could make sure that I had some books prepared for it. And I gave this one a lot of thought because there are so many good books out there. And a lot of bad ones too, right? But there are many,
It's
many
not an
really
easy
good books.
question to
It's
select
not
only
an
one
easy
or
question. I
two.
put a lot of thought into this one.
Yeah.
One book that I read over the past few years is a book called Sooner, Safer, Happier. And it's by Jonathan Smart. Very, very good book, really well written. It talks a lot about anti patterns, which are, if you're not familiar with anti patterns for the audience, anti patterns are those things that you truly believe are the right thing, but they're not. Right? They're the things like, oh, we should be doing this. And it turns out it was a really bad idea. Those are anti patterns. Has some great concepts in there. I really love the book, and it's a good read. It's pretty easy to read. Now, another book that I am going to highly recommend, more difficult to read, but it's a very very good book. It's called The Principles of Product Development Flow. Now, this one's a little more advanced, and it's by Donald Reinerson. The With this book, it talks about things like queuing theory and a lot of lean concepts, the theory of flow, which when you're getting beyond just I'm doing Scrum and you're now focusing on the flow of work through your process, the value streaming, and these kinds of concepts, it gives you the math. It gives you the facts behind these things and why it's real and not just, oh, it's a good theory. It's not a good theory. It's actual work. They're real. They do work. So fantastic book. If you like math, if you're an engineer, you'll probably enjoy this book a lot. But yeah, right, exactly. Well, it's one of my favorite books. But it's deep, right? So you have to be ready for it. But it's a fantastic book. I've got other books as well, but that's probably a good start.
Thank you. Roy, final words, final thoughts for our viewers here today.
So important thing to remember when you're doing a transformation is it is, and the word is overused, it is a journey. You're going to make tons and tons of mistakes. It is normal to make those mistakes. So make them. It's okay. You can make mistakes. Expect that you're going to make lots and lots of progress, and then 6 months later, you're going to be falling backward again. It happens all the time. If you are the champion of this transformation, at some point in time, people will hate you. It's going to happen. It's like, it's Rory again. Just I wish he would leave us alone with this stuff. The word agile, even right, is going to get tiresome, and you may need to rebrand. Expect failures, expect setbacks, but always have that mindset, that lean mindset. And I love this phrase of having the pursuit of perfection. It doesn't mean you're going to achieve it. You're pursuing it. So you're always looking to get better. It starts with yourself, opens up to your relationships with others, and then to your organization, to your customers, your services, and your products. It is the pursuit of perfection. You will never achieve it, but it's important that you stay on that journey and constantly do it, right? And be ready for the failures because they're going to happen. That's my advice.
Thank you so much, Roy. I really appreciate. I look forward to the next time we speak.
Anytime, Leon. Always a pleasure.